Welcome to True Crime Threads, where real lives unravel behind the quietest secrets. In today's case, a Dubai groom uncovers a deadly past hidden in a single photo. In the glittering city of Dubai, where towering skyscrapers meet endless luxury, a new couple was the talk of their community. Arman Saeed, a 34-year-old real estate investor from Pakistan, had recently married a quiet and graceful woman named Hira Malik. She was soft-spoken, well-dressed, and had a mysterious charm that drew attention without trying. The two had met online and quickly fallen into a whirlwind romance. Hira claimed to be a fashion consultant working remotely. Her background was vague, but Arman was too smitten to ask questions. Within 3 months, they were married in a private ceremony at a luxury hotel in Jumeirah. Friends described the pair as beautifully matched and envied their lifestyle weekend-up parties, designer clothes, and curated Instagram posts. Dubai, known for its speed, wealth, and reinvention, had provided the perfect setting for their rapid love story. Arman had lived there for over a decade, building his business from scratch. He owned multiple rental apartments and managed a small but thriving agency that catered to high-end clients. His life had been focused on work until Hira entered it like a fresh breeze. With her around, his pace slowed. He began canceling meetings just to spend more time with her, and the two were rarely seen apart. Hira kept her life quiet. She didn't make many friends and wasn't active on social media. Aside from a carefully curated Instagram with no personal details, her presence was always calm, her tone measured, and her expressions controlled. People noticed she rarely spoke of her past, but in Dubai, where many people start new lives, such behavior wasn't seen as odd. Most assumed she had left behind a simpler life and was now adjusting to luxury and attention. Their apartment overlooked the marina, filled with glass, marble, and sunlight. Inside, it was spotless and quiet, like a model home. Hira often spent her days arranging the house, trying new recipes, or reading fashion magazines. Arman would come home to the scent of oud and candles, a scene that felt like something from a catalog. Everything looked perfect. To the outside world, they were an ideal couple. They were regularly seen attending gallery openings, hotel brunches, and private rooftop dinners. Arman posted photos of them smiling under city lights, her head resting on his shoulder. There was no sign of tension, no hint of anything unusual. Even close friends believed this was one of those rare love stories that begin online and grow into something lasting. But there were small things, almost invisible, that went unnoticed. A drawer in her dressing table that was always locked, a hesitation whenever someone mentioned family, occasional flashes of worry when the topic of Pakistan came up. Still, none of these moments lasted long enough to raise suspicion. Arman trusted her completely. She was kind, attentive, and made his home feel alive. The city around them buzzed with speed and distractions. No one paid attention to small mysteries. But in a city where everyone is running from something or toward something, silence often hides the loudest truths. And as the days passed, what looked like a beautiful beginning was, in truth, just the quiet before everything fell apart. About 6 weeks after the wedding, Arman's routine changed. He had started spending more time at home. Due to a slowing real estate market, projects were delayed, clients pulled out of deals, and the economy was shifting. With fewer meetings and more hours to himself, Arman found himself drifting into the quiet spaces of his luxury apartment. Late at night, he often scrolled endlessly through social media, property forums, and discussion threads to pass the time. One night, during a long scroll through Reddit, a post titled "My Wedding Was a Lie" caught his attention. It was a discussion where users shared stories about discovering secrets about their partners often years into the relationship. Some of the stories were outrageous, others sad. Arman clicked out of curiosity. As he scrolled through the post, something made him pause. A blurry but familiar image caught his eye. A bride in a heavily embroidered red dress, standing next to a tall man in a banquet hall. The face looked just like Yasami's. Same smile. Her name was listed as Hira Qureshi, not Malik. The photo was part of a larger thread where anonymous users exposed secret pasts of others, usually anonymously. But this image wasn't just familiar, it was unmistakable. Disturbed, Armin downloaded the photo and began searching for more. He ran it through a reverse image tool and was led to a dormant Facebook account. There, he found a complete album of wedding photos uploaded years ago. The images showed Hira in traditional attire, laughing, holding hands with another man, surrounded by guests in what appeared to be a grand wedding in Lahore. The groom's name was Shahid, and from the captions and comments, it was clear this wasn't a small event or a brief relationship. The more he looked, the more questions filled his mind. Why had she never mentioned this? What had happened to that marriage? And why had she changed her last name? Armin knew marriages end, people move on, and not everyone talks about their past, but something about the way she had hidden every trace of this part of her life felt different. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was erasure. He began going through her belongings while she was out. Her passport listed Hira Malik as her name, but he found no documents older than 3 years. Her phone was clean, with no saved numbers from Pakistan, no family photos, no emails. Her laptop had only recent work files and entertainment apps. It was as if her life had only started when she arrived in Dubai. Worse still, he couldn't find any divorce certificate or evidence of separation. Every trace of her past had been scrubbed away. Armin began feeling as though he had married a stranger. She had woven herself into his life with grace and silence, but behind it all was something carefully hidden. What bothered him most wasn't the existence of a previous marriage, it was the fear that he had been deliberately misled. And now that he had seen the images and found the name, he could no longer look at her the same way. Something had shifted. The woman he thought he knew had left shadows behind, and he couldn't ignore them anymore. The next day, Armin contacted a private investigator without telling Hira. The decision didn't come easily, but the unease growing inside him had pushed him past hesitation. He provided the man with the name from the photo show and the location of the wedding in Lahore. Within days, the investigator began sending updates, each one more troubling than the last. What seemed like a long-forgotten marriage was far from ordinary. Shaib hadn't just disappeared from Hira's life, had vanished completely. According to reports from Lahore, Shaib's family had filed a missing persons report almost 2 years earlier. The last confirmed sighting of him was at the couple's home. Neighbors remembered arguments. A few said they had heard things being thrown or doors slamming in the middle of the night. One person recalled that police had come around asking questions, but nothing had come of it. The investigation had stalled without any leads, and eventually, the case had gone cold. Hira had left the country not long after Shaib vanished. Armin read through the translated reports with growing discomfort. It wasn't just that Shaib had gone missing, it was the fact that Hira had never been ruled out as a person of interest. She had cooperated with police, answered basic questions, and then simply left. There had been suspicions, rumors even, but no hard evidence. Shaib's phone had gone silent. His bank accounts hadn't been touched. Friends described him as responsible and calm, someone who wouldn't just walk away without telling anyone. Yet nobody had been found, and no trace of him had surfaced since. The investigator also discovered that Hira had used a forged birth certificate and identity card to apply for a new passport under her maiden name. Once she had the documents, she disappeared from Lahore's radar. She didn't contact anyone. There were no social media traces, no digital footprints, nothing. She had erased herself completely and reappeared in Dubai as someone else. It was not just a name change, it was a total transformation. Armin's mind kept returning to the drawer she kept locked, the carefully curated silence about her life before Dubai, and how even on their wedding day, she had no family present. He remembered asking once, and she had vaguely said they lived far away and preferred to stay private. At that time, it hadn't seemed unusual. Now, it felt like the first warning he had ignored. The investigator urged caution. There was no proof of a crime. Shaib's body had never been found, and no charges had ever been filed. But the timeline was alarming. Shaib vanished. Hira left the country. She started a new life under a new name. If it wasn't guilt, it was at least a secret worth hiding. The implications were chilling. Armin didn't know what scared him more, the idea that his wife had possibly killed her previous husband, or the fact that she had lived with him all this time without showing a single crack. Every memory now felt different. Every smile looked staged. The silence in their home wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy. And in that silence, a truth was waiting, buried beneath carefully constructed lies. Armin changed overnight. He grew distant, erratic, and suspicious. He stopped sharing details about his day and began watching Hira more closely. He started locking his phone, erasing his search history, and keeping the investigators' updates to himself. The cheerful atmosphere that once filled their apartment turned cold. Hira, unaware of the storm gathering around her, continued her routine as if nothing had changed. She planned meals, folded laundry, and moved through their home with quiet confidence. But to Armin, her calm now felt like calculation. He installed hidden cameras in the living room and kitchen, checking footage late at night while pretending to sleep. He searched her drawers, scanned her devices when she wasn't looking, and checked her browser history. He even followed her once when she went out to a nearby mall. But no matter how closely he looked, he found nothing. There were no strange calls, no secret meetings, no signs of any ongoing deception. Hira acted exactly the same as she had since the day they married. If there was something dark in her past, it wasn't showing now. Despite the lack of evidence, Armin's thoughts refused to rest. He couldn't shake the images of Shaib's wedding, the stories from the investigator, or the possibility that he was living with someone who had orchestrated a disappearance. His nights became sleepless. He stared at the ceiling, playing out scenarios in his head. He imagined her past, wondered what she was thinking when she looked at him, and questioned whether any of her affection had been real. The woman who had once brought him peace now filled him with dread. Weeks passed, and the pressure inside him built. On a rainy evening in mid-June, it finally exploded. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Armin had spent the entire day pacing, staring at the photos again, going over every conversation they'd ever had. He took the printed images of Hira's previous wedding, placed them on the table, and waited. When Hira returned from grocery shopping, soaked from the light drizzle outside, she noticed the pictures immediately. The confrontation was brief and intense. She stood frowning, eyes on the images. What she said, how she reacted, and what expression crossed her face, none of it would be remembered clearly. What came next was faster than thought. Armin, trembling with anger and fear, reached for a heavy marble decoration piece from the shelf. In one swift movement, he struck her across the head. She fell instantly, the sound of her skull hitting the floor echoing through the apartment. When the neighbors heard the crash and called security, the scene they entered was one of stillness and blood. Hira lay motionless on the cold tiles. Armin stood nearby, his shirt stained, hands shaking, the marble object still on the floor beside him. There was no attempt to run, no effort to cover anything. He simply stood, staring at nothing, as if the reality had not yet settled in. He confessed on the spot. There were no denials, no explanations, just a quiet statement. It wasn't murder, only rage. But the truth was clear. The silence that once held their marriage together had finally shattered, and what was left behind was irreversible. During the investigation, more chilling truths surfaced. The Dubai police, working with authorities in Pakistan, reopened the cold case surrounding Shaib's disappearance. The photographs Armin had found were submitted as evidence, along with the findings from the private investigator. What began as a domestic crime in Dubai quickly evolved into something far more complex. Interpol became involved, and within weeks, the case that had been buried for years was active again. Investigators began retracing Hira's movements before she left Pakistan, focusing on the days leading up to Shaib's vanishing. Search warrants were issued for her old family home in Lahore, the same one where the couple had once lived. Neighbors watched as officers dug up the backyard, moving carefully and slowly. After 2 days of excavation, they uncovered human remains buried beneath a concrete slab, hidden behind the garden. Forensics later confirmed the identity, Shaib. His body had been wrapped in plastic, buried deep, and left to decompose unnoticed. The discovery shocked everyone. The case that had once seemed like a disappearance was now officially classified as a homicide. Toxicology reports revealed poison in Shaib's system. Investigators pieced together the likely chain of events. Shaib had been poisoned and then buried by someone with both motive and opportunity. The timeline matched the final weeks of their marriage. Hira had told neighbors they were renovating the backyard during the time, even hiring workers for what she described as drainage repairs. The truth was far more sinister. All signs pointed to Hira, her sudden departure from Pakistan, the forged documents, the new identity, and her silence about everything in her past were no longer just suspicious, they were part of a cover-up. Prosecutors prepared a case that would have likely led to her arrest and trial for Shaib's murder if she had lived. The plans were made for posthumous charges, primarily to preserve the legal trail and allow Shaib's family to pursue justice through other means. Back in Dubai, Armin's confession and cooperation were noted, but the court could not ignore the brutality of the act. Though his motive was rooted in betrayal and fear, the law required accountability. Mental health evaluations were conducted. He showed signs of trauma, but not insanity. In the end, the court sentenced him to 18 years in prison for second-degree murder. There was no appeal. Armin accepted the verdict in silence. News of the case spread across both countries, sparking debates about identity, trust, and the consequences of secrets left buried. Media outlets ran headlines for weeks, painting the couple's love story as a faible built on lies. People who had once admired them now spoke of red flags they claimed to have noticed. Shaib's family, after years of uncertainty, finally received answers, though they came wrapped in tragedy. Two men's lives had been destroyed. One had lost his life under concrete, the other behind bars. Hira, a woman who had rewritten herself, left behind more questions than answers. Her life, stitched together with silence and reinvention, had unraveled in the most violent way. What began as a picture-perfect marriage in Dubai had ended with 3 lives lost in different ways, and a truth that surfaced only when it was too late to change anything.